I'm Stephanie Jones, Director of e-Business at the SEMA Data Co-op. I've worked hands-on with data standardization since 2003. I've had the opportunity to learn from and work beside some of the folks instrumental in shaping the standards in the early years. I've designed systems and published thousands of data files using the standards and have taught several courses to share my cultivated knowledge. I hope you find useful information in this video that can assist in better understanding the standards and how to use them to benefit your organization. Welcome to the SEMA Data Co-op's PIES 201 video course. In this course, we'll cover further details on the looping segments, an XML to Excel content comparison, the PIES 6.7 spec packet, and how the standards get updated. Well, now that we have a basic understanding of what PIES is, the tables that it's structured around, and an idea of the type of data that will fit into each of these segments or buckets in PIES, let's take a closer look at the looping segments. So looping is when you have multiple types of information within the same field in the same segment that you want to deliver for the part number. So this means that the PIES file can contain the element multiple times. So here on the screen we see a snippet of the 6.7 pricing segment. And let's specifically look at the D35 price tables. Now I've got it filtered here. We see that yes, it's a coded value. So over there to the right, that points down to the coded values that are available for the D35 price type. So as you see, the reference ID still remains D35, and there are a whole lot of 3-digit codes that can be used when you're defining the different types of pricing that you could include for your part. So because price is a looping segment, you can use as many of these codes as needed. This is an example of how to loop the price types for your part number. So on this screen example, there's 3 price types that are used: the good core, the warehouse distributor, and the jobber pricing. Each has its own price amount, and you can notice that only pricing is in the price tag in this example. So we don't have descriptions in here, we don't have digital assets in here. This is strictly pricing. Okay, let's spend a few minutes taking a look at the packet that you'll receive when you download your PIES spec from AutoCare. We're going to be looking at 6.7 today because that is the current version of PIES that is released. When you open up your zip file that you'll receive, there's a few documents inside it. There's a couple of README files. There's a field definition file, technical spec file, and then an XSD. So let's take a look at the field definition file first. Basically, it's your documentation on the standard that will give you all of the rules and information that you're going to need when you're creating your file. So this gives you all the tips and things that you're going to need to know as you create your data. There's also a lot of examples of how to create your XML output as well. So it's a very useful document to use when you're creating your data. The next file let's take a look at is the XSD. We'll jump over to it first. And here is basically where the XSD is basically your rule keeper. So anything that you're going to use to validate the different fields in that, this is the gatekeeper right here. So as you can see, you can kind of look down through here and recognize some of the names, and then there'll be rules and that associated with each of those. So the important thing about making sure that your PIES file, when you create your XML output, you want to make sure that it's valid. This is what you use to make sure that it's valid. Now, if you're not going to do that on your own, then you can always jump over to our PIM system and you can use our file validator. So here you can select what you're going to validate. You can select the file that you want to validate and just simply click on it. And what it does is it's going to compare your data file with the XSD version that you've selected. In this case, this file doesn't happen to have any validation errors. It passes. If there were errors, it would list them down here. Okay, and then the next one that I want to cover is the technical spec. And this is where basically all of your PIE's fields are going to live. So here's where you can come and take a look at everything that's available in the PIE standard that you either have to use because it's mandatory or that's optional that you want to use because it's important to your product. So what I like to do when I'm working here in the spec is I go in and just click data filters and I set filters on my field labels. Just makes it a lot easier when you're going through so much information because as you can see, lots and lots and lots of fields available for us in the PIE's standard. So let's talk about how to read this file. We've got the reference column over here in column A. That's going to be what it's referred to like when you're creating your XML file. There's the segments, so here we can filter on, the various segments that are available. We've already, studied those. So you've got a header segment, you've got the item segment, a market copy segment, a packaging segment, etc. The next column is the field names, so the fields that are available in each segment. Then we go into a couple of rule fields. So D shows whether or not it's a required field for that segment. So you'll see that some are considered as a key mandatory field, or it's just mandatory, maybe optional or conditional. If you need to see further what those mean, you're not sure, you can jump down here to the bottom to the Format tab, and that will tell you exactly what those field requirements mean. So I'm going to jump back over to 6-7 tab. In column E, this is the XSD rule. So this will tell you whether or not there's rules associated with that particular field in the XSD. Format is what gives us the rules on the content for the field. So here we can see that some fields, so as an example, this technical contact name, it's an AN160, and what that means is it's an alphanumeric field up to 60 characters long. And again, if you're curious to know what that means, maybe you're not sure what an ID 4 stands for, jump back over here to the Format tab, and it will explain what those mean. So these ID fields, so if it's an ID field, that means that it's coded, so it's going to reside in the code table. And then it would have, in this case, 2 to 3 characters. Jumping back over to the spec, we've got the XML elements and attributes. And this is important when you're creating your XML output so that you label your tags properly. And then H is just showing some simple examples of what may go in that field. Column I is the coded values, and this is a yes/no field. And what this means is if you've got a yes here, it means that this value is going to be coming from the coded values table. So we'll take a look at submission type here as the example of a yes. So you can jump down here to coded values, and then I can come up here and I can filter out. Let's take that filter off. And I've got another filter locked on here too. Let's grab that. We're looking at the header. So here it tells us what codes are available for that submission type. So it gives us the value that we would either use a full or an update if we're using the submission type field. Column J works similar. It's the external code reference. So in this case, if you've got a yes, you could jump out here to the last tab on the bottom of your worksheet, and you could take a look at where that information is linking out to. So these would be external references that would hold more like global type standards. So here you would get into like your ISO tables or your GS1 regulated tables and things like that. And then last is just comments. So just some usage comments of the file. So basically that's the spec. Very easy to navigate. You can go through. Let's say we want to take a look at descriptions, see what's available for fields in the description segment. So I filtered here on description segment, and we see that there's these 6 fields available. If I was curious as to what codes may be available that I could write descriptions on, then I could jump out here, looking, see it's a yes coded value. We could jump back over here. Let's filter out on description. We could even filter it one more time so that we're just looking at those description codes. And here we can see a list of all of the codes that are available. So quite a few description types that we can create. The description gives us a little more information about it. So the ABR code means that it's an abbreviated description that would be 12 characters long. Or we could create associated comments or application summary notes. That would be up to 2,000 characters long. Or if we were looking to create ourselves a long description, here we can see it's coded as DES description, and it is an alphanumeric up to 80 characters long. So that's a quick rundown on how to use the spec itself when you are looking for what PIES fields you're going to need to map, and how they're going to be labeled and formatted. Okay, let's take a look at XML, and it's very important because PIES uses XML as the official trading standard. So we want to make sure that we understand the overall structure of the XML file. So if we take a look here, we see that there's the header information. So that's basically identifying, what type the file is, who the file is coming from, contact information, and so forth. Next down is the price sheet information. So this is where we identify our price sheet. Market copy follows that if it's available for your data file. And the way that this reads is that we're adding by brand at the brand level for this particular brand a feature and benefit. So that's basically how that would read. Or this one here below would be saying, here is my general copy paragraph for this brand. And then you can see off to the right here, it gives us that further detailed information. Next, we open up the tag, the items tag, and here we get into all of your part number, part level information. So here we're showing that we're adding this part number. Here's its UPC code or its G10, and whether or not it's got a hazardous material code associated with it. We identify the brand, whether or not there's ACES applications that will be associated. So you can see it's pretty easy to read a PIES file because we're really not dealing with any codes here. That's the difference, I guess, between it and ACES. One of the differences where the ACES file would have codes, we just use plain text in the PIES XML. Next is the description segment. So you can see how a description is going to look. Here we're adding in English a long description, an extended description, invoice description, etc. Pricing follows. So in this example, this particular part number has a jobber price and a retail price that are going to be sent. Here in the extended information, this is where any of the EXPI information will go. So lots of stuff to add, lots of codes being used here, everything from your warranty information to your popularity codes, life cycle codes, country of origin, emissions, a lot of important details in the EXPI. Further down is product attributes, and in this example, it looks like we've just got a custom attribute that's going to be sent along in this file. Had this have been a standardized PADB standardized attribute, this flag would be set to yes, and instead of a text value here, it would be the coded value for the attribute that we would be describing. Package information is next. So your height, width, length, dimension information, weights of your package. And important thing to point out here is that this package UOM being sent is each. You can send cases, pairs, different palette, different things. But this example is each's. Further down, we see the digital assets. So here is where we reference the image name, what type of image it is that's going to be associated with the part number. Then we close out that tag, and it moves on now to the next part number and goes through the same repeating thing. So one thing I just want to make note of is, the order that these fields and these segments are placed in is important. So they definitely need to be ordered according to the XSD or the spec. And then we'll just jump all the way down here to the very bottom, and we'll see that we then close the file the same way every time, and that's with our trailer segment. So it just identifies how many part numbers I have in my PIES file and when I've created it. So that's a look at it from the 6.7 XML format. Now let's just take a look real quick what that data would look like if it were to be in an in an Excel file. So this is basically how it would look. We've got the version, we've got whether it's a submission full, effective date, who it's from. Okay, so all of that's the same exact information that we had in our XML file, just showing it in this other format. And this is sometimes easier for folks to work with as well when it's flattened into an Excel file. So same thing here, we're looking at the market copy information, so we can see that we're adding, so the flag A, we're adding it by brand, so we've identified what code, we're saying what the brand is here with the 4-digit identifier, so who they are, what type of market copy, so the features and benefits, or if it's the general copy paragraph information, and then the actual content itself, just like we saw in our XML file. And we can go through and do the same thing with each of the segments. So here's your item segment. So we're showing its UPC, its part number, clear down to the last being what part type, part terminology the part falls into. Same thing with description. So in that particular part number that we had looked at, we can see all of the various description codes that are used. These are looped. EXPI works the same way, so you would have that part number listed out with its various EXPI codes and then the value for the code. Packaging would show the part number and all of the height, width, length information, just like we saw. And then same goes for the digital assets. So here's the part, and then it refers to all of the file names and its asset types that are associated with it. So that's basically how these two look in different formats. So same content, just shown across different formats. So as mentioned, PIES 6.7 is the current release of the PIES standard today. There's been a lot of versions since then and future versions in the work. The PIES standard update procedure is based on various work groups that submit ideas and proposals to the Technology Standards Committee. This is a voting body that works to keep the standards in line and relevant with today's marketplace. Because there's different versions of the standards available at all times, this means that many times data receivers got to be able to support various versions of PIES because all of the data receivers may not be on the most current version available at the time. This happens sometimes because upgrading to the new standards can be costly, and so not everybody works on the same time frame. And there's also times where companies may feel that changes in the standards are not relevant to their business, so they choose to not update that version and skip to a next one. But as a rule of thumb, it's always best to stay up with the standards, as they are the direction that's given by leaders in our industry that's going to guide us to the most important information that's needed to share your product story electronically with your resellers today. And then just as a note, some of the more notable changes in the 6.7 spec from 6.5 and 6.6 are changes in interchange and kits, and additional fields in the digital asset segment that accommodate more of the 360 spin image metadata. So basically that covers the looping segments and the XML structure, comparing it to an Excel file, and then how the version updating works for the standard as a whole. So in review, we're given a lot of flexibility in the PI standard with the looping segments, types, and the coded values and external code references that we're able to use across many segments. Secondly, the current version of PIs is 6.7. And third, the SDC has tools available to help you convert Excel datasheets into standardized XML files ready for delivery. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.